Welcome to How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, the place where we learn that trust is earned and not given, even with ourselves. I'm your host, Betsy LaFay. I'm a social worker, turned award-winning psychic medium, turned intuition teacher. And my school, Trust Yourself Intuition School, celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2023. Join us each episode as we interview thought leaders and luminaries in every genre. They talk about how and when they learn to trust their intuition. Most say they're still learning. What happens when they do trust it, and what happens when they don't. Stick around as we all walk together down the road towards trusting our intuition. Welcome back to another episode of How to Trust Your Intuition. Well, with what's going on with my chin, this experience was a triumph. I'm extraordinarily proud. There is something major going on, but I'm extraordinarily proud of how I handled it, how I trusted my intuition, and worked hand in hand with Western medicine. So I encourage you to listen after the interview is over, because today's guest, Kaitlin Ilya Wolf, is a priestess of cycles, and she actually gives me really good advice about how to distill the essence of a ritual that I'd like to have around what's going on or what happened with my chin.
The first step for me in any ritual is really getting clear about the intention of the ritual.
She offers advice about how to go about creating a ritual that I honestly think is the best advice for anyone on how to create any ritual. So you're definitely going to want to listen to that after our interview. Kaitlin Ilya Wolf is an ordained priestess, ritualist, communitarian, spiritual counselor, and teacher. Kaitlin has been studying the ritual arts for over 25 years and has been facilitating rituals, ceremonies, rites of passage, and women's circles for over 15 years. She is an ordained priestess with the Temple of Diana, a woman's earth-based tradition. Kaitlin is also a leader in her community, Earthaven Ecovillage in North Carolina, an intentional community living close with the earth. Her passion is supporting people through the process of personal ritual, rites of passage, the cycles of community ceremony, and women's circles. It was an absolute joy and nourishing to speak with Kaitlin today. May our interview nourish you as well. Welcome to the show, Kaitlin. Thank you so much for being here.
It's so great to be here. Thank you.
I will say, actually, I'm feeling compelled to say, before I ask you to introduce yourself, many people are just listening through their ears, but this is also posted on YouTube. And I did say right before we started recording, I was like, I really wish this were in person and I were at your house. And, I don't want to say, it just feels so good and it has everything in it. I mean, for people who are just listening, okay, hanging herbs, basket, beautiful floral print, which looks like I should live in it. Like, okay, so warm light coming through. It's like, okay, yes. So just to paint that picture, and painting that picture, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience. So who are you? What is your gift you're bringing to the world and to the audience?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm Kaitlin Ilya Wolf. I'm a priestess. I'm an ordained priestess, priestess of cycles. My focus is on the cycles within us and around us. And I live here at Earthaven Ecovillage in Western North Carolina. I'm a leader here, the president here at Earthaven Ecovillage as well. And yeah, my passion is really ritual and ceremony, and bringing more ritual into people's lives, supporting people in bringing ritual, and therefore helping us to connect with the cycles within us and around us through personal ritual, rites of passage, community, cycles of ceremony, and women's circles.
Oh my gosh. I have like a zillion questions. I literally could just not even pick your brain, but hear stories about every aspect about what you just shared. Okay. I do have you probably saw me writing some stuff down for myself, for the audience, asking for a friend, asking for me. Okay. Ordained priestess. Can you share How you got ordained, who you're ordained from, and what priestess means. Some people may not even heard of priestess.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm ordained with the Temple of Diana, which is a women's earth-based tradition. And I have been trained through Temple of Diana as well as other trainings I've had. But I was ordained through Temple of Diana. And yeah, priestess, the word priestess can be used in a lot of different ways. I think you can use it as a verb, like to priestess. A ceremony is basically to facilitate, to hold space with in ceremony or ritual. But with the big P, a priestess, when you call yourself a priestess, usually that means that you've been trained or ordained in some way, and do that regularly for people. And it can mean more than just facilitating ritual. It also encompasses a lot of other things. Like I do house blessings and readings, spiritual counseling, and you can compare it to other kinds of ministers. If you might be more familiar with Christianity, priests or pastors, it's a leader in a spiritual tradition. And for me, in my case, it's a more earth-based spiritual tradition.
Oh, very well said. Very well said. I'm really glad that you shared that, because I just want to say, I think it's worth sharing, like, just connecting with you immediately, I was like, yes, right. And I felt all of that. And I think it's important just to put that truth out into the world, because, and we really don't even need, I mean, if you want to comment on it, you can, but we have so much goodness to talk about. But I just want to say that priestess and goddess, from the places that I've been dipping into, especially on the two different coasts, seems like New York has been catching on to California now, of I am the priestess of this, I am the priestess of that, which basically means like I'm going to a party and I have a flowing gown on, and I'm not trying to minimize, but it's confusing. It's confusing to the public. And what you're doing, who you are, how you're expressing yourself, integrating and helping humanity, like, it is different, and it is similar to the path of a priest or a reverend or someone like that, but as you said, more earth-based. So that's amazing. I have questions about the other things you said, but I'm going to use Google for that, because I'm just very excited to get to some other things. But there was a so again, thank you for sharing that and walking that path. So thank you. I want to ask a question about the rituals. It's obviously a very big part of your work, which I totally appreciate. From my perspective, without rituals, there's no ending or beginning marker of time for our consciousness for us to root or ground or grasp onto. And it's very amorphous, cloudy, and it just adds to the general malaise, I think, of all things. But I'm not gonna try to ask a leading question, but there's a few things on my mind that I'm thinking about. Are there rituals that you either have been doing or have started doing that maybe were like missing from the culture? I mean, obviously there are some rituals that people can think of, marriage or a baby blessing, right? Even a house blessing. Like there are rituals that people can think about, but ones that are like, this has been missing and this is something that I do. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I really appreciate you saying about ritual. I can't remember how you said it, but rituals are really can be signposts in our life to help us make sense of our life. And when we have regular rituals, recognizing transitions and passages we're going through within our lives can really help us make sense of our life over time. And I think, to answer your question, I think one of the biggest thing that comes up for me in missing ritual in especially modern life is rites of passage. And rites of passage, it's not just at adolescence. Rites of passage are throughout a lifetime, but especially at adolescence. I think that is one of the biggest things we're missing in modern day life. We do have, like you mentioned, marriage, baby blessings. We have, I think weddings are the biggest example of ritual in modern day life. There's something we all recognize. You walk down an aisle, you say vows. There are certain things that we recognize as that's a wedding. While different people do it different ways, there are things we recognize, and having ritual enactments like that you recognize that are triggered within our body when we've seen other people go through them, when we go through them ourselves, are really empowering and powerful for ourselves to really embody the transition we're going through. And
I literally was like, she just brought it into embodiment. This is amazing. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Great.
And it's really important, because so many of these transitions now do not go recognized, and we don't fully feel them in ourselves, in our bodies, and with our community. And I think also because we've gone, in modern life, we've gone so long without a lot of rites of passage, meaningful rites of passage. Most of us feel uninitiated. So it's hard. It's really difficult to get back into a ritual life. We don't know how to do it. We don't know what to do. And we don't feel like we are, most of us don't feel we have it in us. We don't know enough. We weren't initiated by our elders. So how do we initiate ourselves or younger people?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest problems we're in right now. And I think there's so much work to do around that. And we just have to do it. Like, we just have to jump in and get back, because ritual is a human need. Like, I think ritual, as being a human being, ritualizing our life personally and with our community, is really a human need. And it can look so many different ways. There's ritual and ceremony can look many different ways, but having shared reality around ceremony with the people in your life is really important.
You just talk about that last part a little bit more. The shared part. And why it's important.
Yeah, that's part of it for me, I think, is the cycles and coming back around to things. Like I said, with seeing a ritual, and like, for instance, the wedding, and you see someone walking down the aisle, the vows, the rings, there's certain things, it's in us that we know that means they're getting married. And to have other enactments around other rites of passage that you have shared with your community in other ways, that you've seen other people go through, then you anticipate that in yourself. And it becomes more of a reality inside yourself that is something you are experiencing, and you can really take in the transition you're going through, and really become the new person that you are becoming in whatever transition you're experiencing.
You express that so beautifully and so well grounded, which is just, thrilling. Okay, so as you said, this is something that's missing. And first of all, I love how you clearly named the root of the issue, which is needed. And then you immediately address it. You're like, roll up your sleeves and do it. And I'm like, yes, my kind of guy. So if you're in a place, let's say you're not in an eco village, as you're clearly addressing, you're like, this doesn't exist everywhere. Let's say that you don't even have a single person who even wants to not even participate, not even witness, not even talk about, not even think with about, ponder about, be curious about. But that you have to be the one that starts. Can you just talk to that person a little bit?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think the first step is bringing ritual into our own personal lives, and having a personal practice of ritual. And ritual, when I speak about ritual, it's like there's so many different things that ritual can look like and be. And it can even start with your own meditation practice, your own practice sitting at your altar, prayer, breathing, and then bringing in ritual doesn't have to be done in community.
You're all ready for your vacation. It's really hectic getting here, but you're seated in your airplane seat, looking out the window, and you hear the pilot come on the intercom. Good day, everyone. It's a beautiful day outside, 71 and sunny. As you're aware, To get to where we're going, we need to fly over that mountain range, and sometimes there can be a little bit of turbulence. I'm about 80% sure we'll get there safely. So buckle up, relax, and enjoy your flight. I know that sounds like an absurd situation, but when I put this in context of trusting yourself and trusting your intuition, and I ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how much do you trust yourself? 8 is a very high score when asking people. So if you fall on a 2 to 4 range, you're totally not alone. Now picture this other scenario. You're out to lunch with a friend, and the friend says that they've been having a really difficult time learning French. You ask the logical question, are you taking a class? And their answer is, well, I'm taking Spanish. Guess what? If you want to trust yourself deeply, if you want to have an easier time making decisions, break through blocks, connect with people, know who to connect with when, there's a class for that. I've actually helped thousands of people truly trust themselves in uncertainty, in times of doubt or fear, shame or guilt. And I have a free masterclass called Intuition 101, How to Trust Yourself in Uncertain Times, that will tell you everything you need to know in order to learn to trust yourself. The link is in the show notes. However, you can also go to howtotrustyourintuition.com, all spelled out.
Yeah, you don't have to be. And I think one of the biggest things of bringing ritual into your own personal life, when you don't have a community around you who you can share that with, is bringing it in through your own personal practice of sitting at your altar, meditation, and then also, you can have ritual on your own. You can have rites of passage in a space all by yourself, and call in beings to witness you. There's all kinds of beings that are always with you, and be witnessed by the world around you as well. And so I think it's bringing ritual into more people's lives in the world in whatever ways are possible right now is our first step. And so if that is where you're at right now and you don't have anyone to share it with, bringing it in on your own can be extremely powerful. And some of the most powerful rituals I've been a part of, I've been the only human.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I know you were talking about, beings on the other side of the veil, but were there any animals there in the flesh?
Sure. Yeah. Sometimes, definitely. Yeah.
Just curious. I just love the cats, so that's all. That's all that was on my mind there. So, I'd love to hop into these questions. I'm sincerely curious, especially about how, when you started to learn to trust your intuition. That's something I'm very curious about. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. So for me, and I think for most people, it's a continuous process throughout my whole life. I think I'm still learning to trust myself, still learning to trust my intuition. I think being a human being in this world, especially in this modern world, I think living in this modern life, most of all of us live, we're really detached from the cycles around us, from nature, from ourselves, from the people around us in a lot of ways. And that makes it really difficult to listen to our intuition, to really trust that. So for me, it's been a real process of getting to know myself. The first step for me is really getting to know who I am and getting to know what my inner voice sounds like, so that I can know when it is my true self speaking to me and when it's fear or anger or other people's voices in my head. And once you know yourself in that way, and yourself is speaking to you, you know that it's true. And it's still a process for me. Even though I say that and I know that, I still go through lots of times when I distrust that voice, or I hear other voices that I think it's myself. And I think it's a continuous process of continuing to get to know yourself as you change, and grow, and learning what your own voice sounds like, your own inner voice sounds like, so that you can really know when your higher self is speaking to you in that way.
Right.
And for me, it's also been a real ritual, and ritual has helped me to become more connected with the cycles around me, with nature, with the cycles within me. And I think because, you know, in modern life, we're so detached, and that detaches us from ourselves as well. And so being in ritual, being in having different practices that bring yourself back to yourself is the most important thing for me. And I think, I think that I am better at listening to myself now than I have ever been. I'm probably better than a lot of people, but it's still a continuous practice, and I'm still learning every day.
I love that answer. I was going to ask this question at the end, but you basically touched on it just now. So I'm going to ask you this question. I think you can probably speak to it. So there's obviously it's a continuum, the person who's completely not connected to cycles, and then someone who's super connected. We're always in the middle, but a lot of us are mostly disconnected. How does, or why does, or what happens with your intuition, and why is it important to get connected to the cycles? Or in other words, if you're not connected to the cycles, how sort of specifically does it disconnect you from your intuition?
Well, I think we're cyclical beings, and the cycles inside of us and around us really speak to us. And so we're a part of them. And so when we are more in touch with what's going on, both inside our bodies and around us, it's easier to hear those voices. And I think one of the ways I have found is to really help me, one of the most powerful things is listening to nature and the seasons, and having rituals and practices that I come back to at I celebrate the quarters and cross-quarter holidays, the solstices and equinoxes, and the cross-quarter days, and having practices, rituals by yourself or in community. It can even just be having a special dinner every winter solstice or whatever the thing is. But having practices you come back to at certain points in the year help us to remember the past and remember that we are in this cycle as well, and help us to come back to a real grounded level within ourselves, that we are a part of these cycles, and help us to really remember our inner voice speaking to us, because it comes through in, like, we're timeless beings, right? And so when we live within these cycles, there's something in us that gets awakened.
Yeah. I'm really glad you spoke to that, because it is completely true. I just want to say, this is just adding to what you said. I know for my own self, getting in sync with this, it's like the process of any like two wheels that are out of sync getting in sync. Like cyclically it's way out of sync, and then the next cycle it's like just a little less out of sync. And I think that's part of the, like, we keep getting more aligned and more aligned. And I found that, especially what you're talking about, and I wanted to ask you, because, you know, you're the priestess of cycles, right? So it's like, I want to ask you, and it's totally true. When we're I notice, definitely with me, I try my best to follow the seasons. Obviously, I'm not perfect. I could do a lot of work on it, but I notice a lot of issues, especially with students and clients and whatever, when they're just not following, right? So it's like, whatever, late fall or the dead of winter, and they're just trying to run like a rabbit through things, and they're like, why do I have chronic fatigue all of a sudden, and it's like, well, guess what? And but I just wanted to ask you about that, because I thought you'd have a lot to say, and you did, so thank you. I'd love to hear some instances, either where, I'd like to hear this one first, maybe where your intuition said to do something and you like distrusted it and didn't follow it, and what happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something, the biggest thing. So I think I could think of lots of things. I mean, it's like I said, it's still an issue for me. I'm not perfect. I don't listen to my intuition all the time.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for me, thinking about a time I didn't listen to myself, was when I was young and in an abusive relationship, and really thinking back on that time. I was with a man, and I knew it was not, I mean, now looking back, I think I knew. At the time, I thought it was great. But now looking back, I just was not listening to myself at all. I wasn't even paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so really thinking back on that time, and so what it took for me in that instance to really wake myself up was seeing this man in front of my family and get angry in front of my family. And for that, in that case, it was, it helped me to like see it through their eyes, see what was happening through my family's eyes, and to remember, to kind of wake my own eyes up, to open my own eyes.
Yeah, I heard wake up. Yeah.
And I think that was a big wake up call for me to really start to listen to myself more. I think at that time I was young, and I was really looking towards other people to validate me a lot. And so and it was really painful. Obviously, it was really painful way to get that wake up call. But I think one of the ways that we can listen to ourselves is our connection with people who are close to us, and remembering that we're a part of that community, and remembering that we're okay by ourselves. Like that, for me, it was just like seeing what was happening through their eyes helped me to remember that I was who I was, to remember who I was.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, how about a time when your intuition said to do something, perhaps despite logic or a big leap, you followed it, and what happened?
Yeah, I think that when I think back, I have a bigger moment to talk about, but I also think that usually for me, when I'm most in tune with my intuition and most listening, it's not obvious. Usually even if I'm doing something that may seem illogical, it feels very logical. If I am truly listening to myself, it doesn't feel illogical at all, even if other people might think it is. And so sometimes I don't even really notice that it's some big leap I'm making because of my intuition. When I'm truly in tune with that intuition, it doesn't feel unnatural. It feels very right.
Yep.
And so sometimes I might not even really be able to take an opportunity to appreciate myself in that way if it really is flowing that well, you know?
Well, if you're in the flow, I think that's a form of appreciation, I have to say.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, thanks. But one big moment I can think of is when many years ago, before I moved here to Earthaven, the community I live in, I was living in Wisconsin at the time, where my family is, and I basically picked up and moved here after visiting a short time. And I think a lot of people in my life thought it was strange. I was moving to a place I didn't really know anyone very well, at least. And I was just so pulled. I was so pulled here. And I moved here, and that was 15 years ago. And so it's worked out quite well. I've made my life here. And thinking about that moment when I decided to move here, I think it did not feel illogical to me in the moment, even though a lot of people thought maybe it was.
Right.
But it felt like I was following my own path, and I was really listening to either myself or my guides.
Right. Right. That's such a fantastic story. Cause like I have my own moment like that, and I'm putting myself back in that And it's true. It's like, wait, everyone's like, wait, what are you doing? That's crazy. And it's like, in retrospect, you can even tell the story that that's what they were saying. But in the moment, it's almost like you can hear it, but that pull inside is so large. It's just like, whatever, there's some peanut gallery. Did you hear something? You know, like, but you're aware of it, you know, but it's just like your whole self. So that's such a, love that. I really, really love that. I just have to say, it's so funny. So you said before I moved here to Earth, and just like took a tiny pause, you know, Earthaven Ecovillage, and I'm not traditionally wired. I'm non-neurotypical. And so I literally thought you were saying when I first moved to Earth, just for a second. And I was like, oh, we're going to go there. Okay. I didn't think we were going to go there. This is interesting. Let's pay attention. So that was just a nice little chuckle that I had inside. Now you get to chuckle, and it's just fun. It's words are fun. And this has been fun too, truly. Let's just talk about the solstice coming up, right? So what small-ish, you know, of course, we're talking about low resources, maybe not that much time gathering things that one could do on their own, or if they had a household or a small set of people, what could they do for the upcoming solstice?
Yeah, so the summer solstice is coming up, and that it means the shortest night, the shortest time of dark, and the longest day, the most light of the year. And so it's the real peak of energy. It's a real peak of solar energy, of sun. It's the peak of the year in a lot of ways. And it's the opposite time of the year of the winter solstice, when it's the longest night and the shortest day. And so at the summer solstice, it's a real time. I look at it as a beautiful time to really celebrate our bodies and celebrate activity and work and play, and to really be playful in whatever you're doing. And so celebrating with work parties even. And so this is a way you can bring in some of these traditions, even with people who might not be wanting to celebrate the solstice with you. You can have a work party or a barbecue. And whether you call it a summer solstice barbecue or not, you are bringing in tradition. And if you start having it every year at this time of year, you can bring in, like, I think humans want tradition in our lives. We want ritual, and whatever the words we're using, we can bring in the energy of the solstice.
I love that.
Also, if you're just alone, having a prayer and lighting a candle, or having a fire. And if you want to have an all-night vigil of a candle lit or a fire going, both the solstices are really good times to honor this shift because after the solstice, the days will start getting shorter, the nights will start getting longer. And so to honor that nighttime, this shortest night, with keeping a flame going all night, can be a really beautiful way to honor this transition we're all going through.
When I graduated with a BA in psychology in 2002, attachment work was only applied to children. Now, in 2023, it seems to be all the rage for a reason, because knowing your attachment type, there are three main types: avoidant, anxious, and secure, really changes your life. And if you listen to the podcast where I talked about how I lost $100,000 from a spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual coach, the silver lining to that experience was me discovering the root of a lot of my issues. I was anxiously attached. I had anxious attachment. At the very end of that terrible, terrible situation, yes, it was traumatic, I came across Maya Diamond's work. And it was working through her program that literally rewired my brain from anxious to secure. This is how I made it through all of my major transitions over the past 2 years and discovered so much about myself. Now, if you don't know about attachment work, don't feel bad. Here's a typical situation, in fact, the most common situation that happens with these attachment styles. Person A and person B are in a relationship. They care about one another. Person A reaches out to person B, doesn't hear back right away. So then maybe sends another text or another gesture, which further pushes person B away. Both people get resentful, and eventually they might break up. I was in that situation more often than I'd like to remember. I married the wrong person, I had toxic family relationships, and had no idea until I took Maya's program. So, the link for a free consultation is in the show notes, and I'm so happy to offer you, all the podcast listeners, if you sign up for her program, you will get a free session worth $500 with Maya Diamond herself, one-on-one. That's just for How to Trust Your Intuition podcast listeners.
Wow. Wow. For people who don't know, what is the date of the solstice this year?
This year it's on the 20th, the 20th.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, as you said, you do intuitive readings and stuff. When I'm teaching or talking like you were talking, it's almost impossible for me to bring up random examples, quote unquote. I'll be like, da, 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 and I'll, for example, just randomly, and people are like, that's actually right. So, you're in my workspace right now, right? It's called my home. So I don't really have coworkers, but literally, when people are listening to this on tomorrow, so the solstice, I'm going to a co-working barbecue work party.
Nice. Beautiful.
You totally hit the mark. And I'm like, that, I mean, it's not that unusual, but it's very, very specific. A work barbecue on the solstice. And that's the closest thing you can get in my life. So I really appreciate all this.
That's wonderful. And it's so wonderful when it just happens that way. I think it's in our bodies, we want to be, we are working with the cycles, whether we're consciously doing so or not. So it's really beautiful when you notice that's just happening that way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, well, how can people find you, and what would they want to come to you for specifically if they weren't to just be fans and following whatever you're sharing?
Yeah, you can check me out at priestessofcycles.com, and there's lots of information about what I do there. I facilitate a red tent ritual, which is a women's circle on Zoom every month. So if you're a woman and you're interested in joining me in ritual online, check out my website. I have one coming up this month. This will be airing on the 19th. So every month, I have a women's circle online. And I also, my main passion is really leading people through a process of creating your own personal ritual and rites of passage. So if you have a ritual or an event coming up in your life that you want to ritualize, I can support you in creating ritual in your own life.
So beautiful. So beautiful. Well, thank you so much for embodying, what your work. So I really appreciate you coming by here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to talk with you, Betsy.
Yay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the first step for me in any ritual is really getting clear about the intention of the ritual.
Okay.
I would say, think about what your intention of a ritual would be. Mm-hmm. Would it be a ritual to work on healing your chin, or would it be a ritual to dive deeper in the meaning of what is happening, or to recognize the transition that the chin stuff is manifesting out of?
Yeah.
A really good way to get clear about your intention is just to start writing. Write stream of consciousness. What comes up for you when you think about your intention for this ritual? Just start writing as much as comes out, and then whittle that down to a paragraph of at least a paragraph. And then if you can whittle that down to one sentence of just this is the intention for the ritual. And then usually the ritual, often that is the biggest part of the work of a ritual, is getting the intention really clear. And usually once you're really clear with the intention, you can even whittle it down to one word if that's possible. And when you do that, everything you have written before that will energetically be contained in your one word or your one sentence. And then when you have that one sentence or one word, the ritual usually will flow out of that. You'll know what to do. And there's lots of work to do after that to come up with the actual enactment. But when you have a really good intention, the ritual will be really well held by that intention.
How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, is written, produced, and created by me, your host, Betsy LaFay. Music provided by Ben Talmy. If you don't want to be like that pilot that is 80% sure you'll get to your next destination safely, and you want to take the right class to learn the right language, and guess what? Intuition is a language. Head over to howtotrustyourintuition.com. I hope this podcast has been helpful to you. If it has, please forward it to a friend who you think it could also make a difference for. There's something that you can do for me and everyone else who listens to this podcast as well. If you hit subscribe, you'll never miss another episode. It'll also help the show get to other people. And of course, I know you've heard other podcast hosts say this before, but it's totally true. If you leave us a 5-star rating and a review, it helps other people like you discover this podcast. We all need to learn to trust our intuition. So, hit subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and write a little blurb while you're there. Your intuition will thank you.